Whoa. I forgot to pick up my kids from school. I can cut to the chase a little bit this week. Tonight we're kicking off with this headline first scooped by Bloomberg. Sony shuts down video game studio Bluepoint. And yeah, if you're asking me, I too think it's weird that Bloomberg insists on hyphenating video game. But that's beside the point. And it kind of ties into this dark fascination I've been having about the fixed point in which somebody in charge deems a project unsalvageable. Some sort of metric that is not met, where they look at this, they look at these numbers, and they say, we can't fix it. Back out now. And you would think, or hope, that the threshold for canceling a video game would be lower than the threshold for canceling an entire studio. So if you don't know what Bluepoint Games is, they were, formerly, part of the prestige of PlayStation Studios. They were acquired in 2021, a real jewel in the crown, you know? While they had never made a brand new game of their own, amongst all of the remakes and remasters this studio was responsible for, they made 0 bad games, which is tough to do. If there was a Bluepoint Games logo popping up at any point in last week's State of Play, it would have caused millions to sharply inhale. Instead, they're just gone now. Poof. So Bloomberg's reporting suggests that immediately after releasing Demon's Souls, Bluepoint went to work helping on God of War Ragnarok. And then once that was done, started working on a game as a service in the God of War universe. So that was canceled last year in January. And at the time, PlayStation told Bloomberg that it was working with Bluepoint to determine the studio's next project. And here we are, 13 months later, and they didn't come up with anything. Hey man, look, there was a recent business review, which came to the apparent conclusion that this entire 70-person studio, filled with admittedly incredibly talented people, was no longer of value to Sony. Bluepoint Games was deemed unsalvageable. So out of curiosity, I went back to the original 2021 announcement of this acquisition. You know, the old welcome to the family post. Yes, of course, penned by Herman Hulst. And I find this particular part chilling in hindsight. With each of its projects, Bluepoint has raised the bar on console-defining visuals and gameplay. It's exaggerative, but fair. And the studio's vast expertise in world building and character creation will be a huge plus for future PlayStation Studios properties. Like, I'm not trying to take this moment to be rude, but character creation and world building was not evidently part of Bluepoint's strengths. What I wonder after reading that is, what did Sony think they were buying Bluepoint for? What did they think they were going to get from this? And I guess, of course, we'll never know. They're just happy shutting down the studio and letting us all know, don't expect any more games from this studio. What I will say is that headlines like these, behavior like this, does influence and color how you might see the reveal of, say, Horizon Hunter's Gathering. Now, that game was introduced with a whole almost 10-minute long breakdown, but within the first 30 seconds, first things first, they wanted to communicate this.
Before we dive in, I want to be very clear about one thing. We absolutely love making single-player games, and we're going to keep making them. They're a huge part of who we are as a studio.
They're essentially saying, we know what this looks like, but it's not that, okay? This is not replacing anything. This is just extra. Please don't be mad about this. And then, as you see more of what this project is, I don't think anyone would rationally be mad, but certainly, understandably, unenthused. And yeah, Guerrilla just promised they love single-player games. However, if you're willing to scroll deep enough on Jason Schreier's Blue Sky, you'd learn that most of the studio is working on Horizon Hunter's Gathering. It's not some little baby offshoot. It's Guerrilla's next big thing. And you look at this and you wonder, at what point would they consider this unsalvageable? How long could most of Guerrilla really keep working on this And it's crazy what they're trying to stress and communicate. They say, don't worry, there's cutscenes. So this will be around for a long time, baby. And to be fair with the game, I do think the visual style is at least nice. I can see why an executive in a boardroom would look at this and say, wow, yeah, you've got something here. I see world building. I see character creation. Those are my two favorite things. And who knows, maybe the game will be fun as heck. Maybe when the beta rolls around, everybody's hopping in and saying, bro, you got to get on Hunter's Gathering. We're having a blast killing robot dinos together. Maybe. For now, I would think it is clear to anybody even just reading the YouTube comments and that initial reveal that this project should right now already be in salvage mode. How do we salvage this? I'm begging Sony and Guerrilla not to be surprised when the player count for month 1 is not impressive. And then, yeah, of course, I do want to talk about Highguard and 2XKO, both of which are not unsalvageable technically, but they're both strangely what I would consider high-profile releases that, with under 2 months after their release, had to publicly announce that they are downsizing the staffs of their games. Now, Highguard, of course, is the game best known for not being good enough to end the Game Awards, which is apparently a thing now. It's officially, unofficially a thing. I can't imagine Jeff trying to give that slot to any game next year. Who's going to want it? I wouldn't. If I'm putting out a game right now, I would say, please, I don't want to cause a fuss. Just put me in after Honkai Star Rail. I'm good. Anyway, to announce the departures that they'd be having, Wildlight Studios, makers of Highguard, they made their announcement as a tweet, of course. They say, today we made an incredibly difficult decision to part ways with a number of our team members while keeping a core group of developers to continue innovating on and supporting the game. The message is, it's not over, but yes, it's definitely bad. We were not expecting this. Now, in the case of the 2XKO announcement, I found it surprisingly blunt. They say as we expanded from PC to console, effectively that was the launch of 1.0, we saw consistent trends in how players were engaging with 2XKO. The game has resonated with a passionate core audience, but overall momentum hasn't reached the level needed to support a team of this size long term. They're essentially saying this game is too big budget for how small of a player base this is. And it wasn't an abysmal launch, right? It's just clear now that Riot was expecting a hit. And as we talk about the human cost of these things, I found it, again, pretty unusually upfront. Where down here they say that at the very least, impacted rioters would receive 6 months of notice pay and severance. Sure, thanks for letting us know about that. Now, the dark fascination comes in with whatever trends that 2XKO team was looking at. Whatever data the Highguard team had, this would be fine. This represents hard decisions, weeks of discussions, a post on Twitter. But hey, what is important is that neither of them are technically unsalvageable. They could turn it around. I mean, Highguard just put out an update. Check this out. You can buy one of these owls to ride for, let's check, $19.99 US. And while I guess that might seem kind of hefty, you have to remember, you'll be able to ride that owl for as long as Highguard is still online. And quickly, just to nod at a couple of other Highguard headlines, it was juicy that their website went down, but it's up now. But also, it was juicy that the game is reportedly secretly funded by Tencent. And that might have something to do with why they had to make such abrupt and severe cuts. However, saying so would be conjecture on my part, and we don't do that here. Lastly, I think it would be nice to bring up a game that has seemed to turn its fate around recently. Talking about Overwatch. Nay, Overwatch 2. 2 weeks ago, they had this whole half-hour Overwatch 2026 spotlight video, and the last big reveal is this.
We realized Overwatch is a game that transcends any single number. So moving forward, we're dropping the 2 and continuing simply as Overwatch.
Yeah, it was very dramatic. Now, typically I would say it is weird and stupid for a sequel to remove its number, However, in this case, it was weird and stupid to consider Overwatch 2 a sequel. So I think in everyone's case, nobody's upset. But beside that, it's been pretty wild to see a reinvigorated interest in what I had considered a flagging game. Turns out Overwatch Season 1 launch was pretty big. I mean, look at these results. Overwatch just hit its all-time player count peak on Steam. Now, it's only been listed on Steam for 2 years, but still, best in 2 years. Kotaku says, while you weren't watching, Overwatch put its crown back on. Eurogamer says, I haven't been this excited about Overwatch in 10 years. GameSpot says, I'm leaving Fortnite for Overwatch with its 2026 update. That's big. You don't just leave Fortnite for nothing. Now, the scary thing to me about this rejuvenation is what I would consider the primary pull, which was this.
We're going big. Instead of just 3, we're releasing 10 new heroes over the course of the year. And the first 5 are launching next week with Season 1.
So they used to, if I understand this correctly, they used to just put out 3 characters in 1 year, which doesn't seem bad to me. And then for this Season 1, they put out 5 characters in 1 day. Perhaps the cure to unsalvageableness is just working 3 times as hard. Video game studios, you should get hiring. And that's Delayed Input. I'll be back next week. Until then, thanks for watching. As this is the first episode of a new season, there's some old business that must be addressed. So in the last Delayed Input, I was talking about how the overall scriptedness of the Xbox Developer Direct kind of undercut the entire point of having it be a Developer Direct. A strange thing happened 12 days after that Developer Direct. Double Fine on their own YouTube channel posted their own mini-doc, innocuously titled Double Fine's Kiln, Dev Direct Behind the Scenes. So you would think, cool, let's see some insight into what goes behind a production like that. However, the mini-doc in itself kind of plays out like a defense. Kind of plays out like that wasn't us. That's not us. That's not who we are. In fact, it's really crazy to see this juxtaposition of these developers' Double Fine selves and their Xbox selves.
It's pretty surreal. I think there was so much preparation in terms of like the script and stuff beforehand, and they had a teleprompter, which was, I felt, very relieving.
You'll be fulfilling your Pottery Power fantasies when Kill launches on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC.
You're almost comfortable.
And the Double Fine documentary is really funny because nobody at any point outright says anything disparaging about Xbox. However, in the edit itself, which is purposeful, which is pointed, it's clear they're making that entire team them.
That was great. Let's just hit make it yours a little bit more because that's like the point, right? Make it yours.
There's a moment here where co-EP Tina Amini's talking. This guy actually never speaks, but he does get a lower third. Those two were presumably interviewed for more than one question. However, only one made it in. And it's this.
It is a little bit of a performance because people aren't used to intonating in certain ways, reducing their ums and uhs and looking around. The things that you do naturally but doesn't present as well in front of the camera. So it's just a matter of making it as polished as possible, but it's still as authentic as possible because that's the number one through line for this show for us is making sure we hit the authenticity of the game and the authenticity of the people speaking to the game.
What I am telling you is that the editor of this mini doc is devious and knew exactly how those comments would come off. Here's a shot where you get to see how dense the script is, with particular words bolded even. So watching that whole video, it wasn't surprising that I was completely right about how developer directs are produced. I guess it was shocking to see that Double Fine hates Xbox almost as much as I do. And then one more thing needs to be acknowledged. Earlier this year, as I usually do, I did my top 10 most anticipated trailers of the year. The return of Sorry to Keep You Waiting was number 1. And yeah, I even went as far as to say this. Kept you waiting, huh, is also acceptable. Well, in last week's State of Play, the very last line of the Death Stranding 2 PC port trailer is this.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Now, I thought it would be obvious. That doesn't count as the return of sorry to keep you waiting. You can't just say the phrase, you have to embody it. And a PC port of Death Stranding 2 certainly does not. And then this very week, Rainbow Six Siege has a Solid Snake reveal trailer in which he says this to Splinter Cell's Sam Fisher.
Kept you waiting, huh?
I feel like there probably was a time in which like a live audience at a Ubisoft E3 press conference would see these two stealth action icons engage in the universal hand clasp of mutual masculine respect, and they would have exploded. For me, right now, I don't feel anything. So to make this as simple as possible for everyone, what we are looking for here is a sorry to keep you waiting kind of trailer in which somebody says sorry to keep you waiting. So I've added an extra set of quotation marks to number 1. Hope this clears things up.